In today's video, CodingBat.com, section List-1, and today's question is called first, last, 6. And we're going to be solving this question in Python, so let's take a look. The question states that given a list of ints, return true if 6 appears as either the first or last element in the array. The array will be length of 1 or more. So here is our question, first, last, 6. And you see that it only takes one argument called nums, which represents a list of integers or an array of integers. And this array is going to be of length 1 or more, but that length can actually vary. So let's say we had our list of numbers here. And we could go over to our terminal and we could rebuild this array and we could access the index and to basically test it and make sure that we can grab the first and last element. So firstly, let's work on how to grab the first item in the list, the first element of the list. So how do you do that? Well, you do opening and closing brackets and you do what's called list indexing, and we're going to pass 0 to that. So num0 is going to return 13. And now to grab the last element of the list, we want to again take nums, and the trick is to pass -1. So we can pass -1 and that returns 3 because the last digit for nums is 3. Now if you knew the number of elements in the list, so in this case len for nums is 5, then you could use that number as another way to find the index. And so what you would do is instead of grabbing the first with num0 or 1 to grab index 1, then you could basically do len nums and then outside that put -1, and this is another way to grab it, right? So we can do -1 or we can do len nums -1. And we have to do -1 because len nums is going to be 5, right? We have 5 elements in this list, but to actually grab that last value in reality would be, you'd have to pass 4 because we know that we start at index 0. So you'd have to pass 4, and it's always like that. It's always kind of an off by 1 issue, and that's part of what they're trying to get you on this question. So now we know the way to grab the first and last elements of the list. So let's implement this. So return true if 6 is either the first element or the last element. So what I would do is if nums0 equals 6, or if nums -1 equals 6, we would return true. Else we're going to return false. So let's click go, and sweet. This is all correct. We're getting all green. So this is the first implementation of my solution to first, last, 6. And just like in the example I showed you in the terminal, of course, we could do len nums -1, and that will work as expected. The -1 is super important. If I tried to pass it, then yeah, we're going to get a list index out of range error. So make sure you pass that -1. So that's another way to do it. Or of course, just nums -1, grab that sort of negative index of the list. And yeah, this is our first implementation of the answer. But there's actually a few ways we could make this more efficient and basically make this a one-liner. So how can we make this a one-liner? Well, I'm thinking what we can do is return true if our condition, else false. And then we can remove this first part, and now we have a one-liner, and we're going to return true given this situation. Otherwise, we're going to be returning false. And we can click go and see that that's still working after having reduced our code to only one line. Now, you may be thinking, isn't there a way to make this code even shorter? And there is. And we can actually remove this basically superfluous true and false, because a return statement like this is already inherently going to be evaluating for truthy and falsy. So we can click go again, and we can see that all is correct again. And you could even wrap brackets around this to make it kind of clear to yourself that yes, this is going to be sort of one statement that we're evaluating together, but or kind of does that work for you. So it's going to be this or that. And of course, these brackets are optional. And this answer we're leaving you with here. Return num0 equals 6 or nums -1 equals 6. That's basically about as efficient of an answer as you're going to get to first, last, 6 in section list1 codingbat.com.